Hey guys, Sean here. Welcome to the F1 Word and to another round of garage gossip and some gossip that might get a few of you quite excited. But as ever, the usual caveat, take all of this with a good pinch of salt. Now, earlier this week, it was reported by Automotor und Sport that Formula One bosses had approached Hockenheim to inquire about the possibility of it hosting a race in 2020, specifically how much time the circuit would need to prepare for a race this year. Let's be honest, this all seems a little bit far-fetched, doesn't it? But apparently, when approached by AMUS, the circuit's manager Jorn Tesk confirmed that conversations had taken place with the topic of Hockenheim holding a race this year also being raised. But he stressed that he has been in regular contact with F1 since last year's German Grand Prix, so essentially the conversations were not necessarily unique or as a result of the current crisis. He went on to add, "We all see that the Formula One calendar is messed up by the current circumstances. If there is any interest in Formula One driving at Hockenheim this summer, we would be willing to talk. The prerequisite is of course that all health requirements and financial feasibility are guaranteed." And this story has gained traction over the course of this week, to be fair, with Autosport reporting that the circuit is in early talks with F1 bosses about hosting a race this year if needed. But it appears as though any potential agreement is still a way off. I will quickly go over a couple more quotes for you, and speaking to Autosport, Tesk said, "I can confirm that we are in talks. We are in dialogue regarding these topics, and we have also talked about the uncertainties of the race calendar in Formula One. We talked about whether such a thing is possible, how it would take place. We exchanged ideas casually, but not about dates, conditions, contract setups, which are absolutely necessary in order to be able to seriously examine something like this. It didn't go that far." There we have it then. Hockenheim have at the very least had a conversation with F1 bosses about the possibility of a race taking place at the circuit this year. But can we really get excited about seeing a German Grand Prix on the calendar in 2020? Well, it's certainly not impossible. After all, the Hockenheim Ring is a purpose-built racetrack and allegedly it could be ready at very short notice if called upon to host a Grand Prix. And if Formula One needs more tracks to help form a calendar, Hockenheim would be a good option given its location in Europe and the fact that a lot of the early races this season, if it gets going, are probably going to have to take place in Europe. It could work quite nicely. The problem is, though, as ever, money. The reason the circuit wasn't originally on the 2020 calendar was that it simply could not raise the funds to be able to afford to run a race. In fact, going back to 2019, one of the main reasons it featured last year was because Mercedes took on the title sponsorship to help the circuit with its cash flow situation, and that's something they weren't willing or perhaps weren't able to do again this year. Therefore, if they had wanted to host a race in 2020, circuit bosses would have had to raise the funds themselves, and that's something they weren't able to do. So really, if F1 wanted Hockenheim to bail them out, if you like, this year, they may have to accept that they wouldn't receive a hosting fee and perhaps may even have to effectively rent the circuit for the weekend. But at a time when the sport is struggling and looking at ways to cut costs, can they really afford to forego a fee or pay out themselves to run a race at some tracks? I mean, ultimately, if they want to reach their target of 15 to 18 races, they may have no choice in the matter, but surely that is not going to be their first choice. And to be fair, from what I've read, Liberty Media's preference is for as many of the remaining races to go ahead as possible and to reschedule some of those that have been called off rather than looking at adding alternative venues. And of course, right now it's not only about the money. Nobody knows what the situation will be like in Germany tomorrow, let alone 3 or 4 months' time. It could well be that a lot of restrictions have been lifted by then and things are improving. But it could also be the case that things are no better or even worse than they are now. So planning for this possibility of hosting a race is all well and good. But at the end of the day, if the government say no, the race won't happen. It really is as simple as that. As of right now, large events in Germany, even those without fans in attendance, are banned until August 31st. So, in theory, with F1 needing a team of well over 1,000 people to go racing, there couldn't be a race at Hockenheim until September at the earliest. And then you've got the likes of Belgium and Italy, probably F1's preference for September. That window of opportunity for Hockenheim to host a race is tiny. Then again, if one of those can't go ahead, let's say Italy for example, then maybe a German Grand Prix could fill that void. Obviously then, if this is a realistic prospect, there are still a lot of hurdles to overcome. But as I've already said, it's not totally impossible. But do I think we will see a surprise return of the German Grand Prix this year? Well, as I said about Imola last week, I would absolutely love it to. Hockenheim is one of those tracks where more often than not we tend to see some very good racing, and last year we had utter chaos as well as some exciting racing. So yeah, it would be great to have it back. However, as much as I would love to see that, I'm not totally convinced. As I've already covered, F1's preference appears to be for the remaining races to go ahead and to reschedule postponed races rather than adding the likes of Hockenheim or Imola to the list. I'm also not at all convinced that the sport will want to pay a fee to circuits, and I can't see how they can afford to waive any potential hosting fee. Right now, with all the uncertainty going on, F1 needs every single penny it can get. I mean, clearly F1 are considering it, otherwise they wouldn't have approached circuit bosses and asked the question, but surely this is all just contingency planning should they fall short of that target of 15 to 18 races, the ambitious target. I'm also not sure where the race would slot into any revised calendar. The latest reports claim that the plan is for 2 races at the Red Bull Ring, followed by 2 races at Silverstone, and then we'd see 2 races back-to-back in Hungary, oh yay. But not on its original date, it must be said, because at time of recording and according to Reuters, events of over 500 people have been suspended in Hungary until August the 15th. And again, as I said earlier, with events being called off until the end of August in Germany and what could already be a packed September, I just can't see where they put a German Grand Prix. It's a good idea to make sure that alternative options are explored, of course it is. And so I do think it's right that Liberty are asking the questions of circuits like Hockenheim and perhaps even Imola if that report is true. But I just do not see a German Grand Prix on the calendar in 2020, but I've got to say, I would love to look back on this video in 6 months' time and be proved completely wrong. How fantastic would it be in 2020, given everything that's gone on, if we saw the likes of Imola and Hockenheim back on the calendar? Oh, probably a little bit of history bias there, in fact a lot of historical bias there, let's be honest. They're just 2 circuits I've always enjoyed. And yeah, I'm sure there are plenty of other F1 tracks from history that we'd love to see back on the calendar, but what do you guys think? Are you excited at the prospect of Hockenheim perhaps making a return to the calendar this year? And how likely do you think it is that we will have a 2020 German Grand Prix? You can as ever let me know your thoughts down in the comment section. That is it for this video though. I will be back soon with more content as ever, but in the meantime, don't forget that you can of course follow me over on social media, and all of the links you need for that are in the description down below. But as ever, thank you for watching, and I will catch you again in the next one. Bye bye.